Hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Halloween episode of the Godless Moms podcast. My name is Janice Selby. I'm also wise counselor and divorce religion on Twitter, and I'm joined by my beautiful co-host, Godless Mom, the original, Courtney. And we are joining you from the Okanagan Valley, which is the unceded territory of the Seal people. And we're just glad to be here with you today, talking about some Halloween stuff, ghosts and goblins, and what it was like to grow up terrified of such things. How are you doing, Courtney?
I'm doing good. I'm just having a regular work day. It's not often that my days just kind of unfold normally. So that's what's happened today. It's rare.
Let's hope it's a trend.
Yeah.
Well, I've already been to the hospital twice today for family members, and it's just a crazy, crazy day for me. So why not throw the podcast in on top of everything else? It makes for a spicy day.
Yeah. So you have another workshop coming up, don't you?
I do. Yes. I have the Divorcing Religion workshop. It's an online workshop that lasts 6 weeks, and we meet every Sunday morning, just like church, from 10 until noon Pacific time. And it's a small group, and everyone is recovering from religion at some point. They're at different points in their journey, and they're making that move from sacred to secular. And they are wanting support to build their new communities and build their new secular life. So I invite people to come over to divorcing-religion.com and sign up for that workshop taking place in November. Thank you.
Yeah. It's an awesome service that you offer, and quite frankly, not enough people do. And we were talking before we went live that there's just not a whole lot of secular counselors, not enough to go around anyway.
Yes, there's a huge, everybody seems to be in a state of crisis right now because, we're living through a pandemic. There's lots of stressful stuff going on, and people are really having trouble finding enough secular therapists. And I am a secular therapist, so.
Yeah. Yay. Cool. Well, let's jump into Halloween because we're on a tight schedule today because Janice has to go at 2. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about Halloween because I know that probably the way that I grew up with Halloween is very different from how you probably grew up with Halloween. So I would love to learn about how Halloween was recognized in your household growing up.
Well, my household growing up wasn't nearly as fundamentalist as the household I inflicted on my children growing up. My dad, of course, the more religious of my two parents. And so he really just kind of wished that Halloween didn't exist. Mom didn't mind so much. She, when we were little, she might take us out, but we couldn't dress as awful, terrifying things, just kind of sweet things. And then we weren't allowed, once we turned 10, that was it. You were too old. Like 11 was too old apparently for trick-or-treating and Halloweening. And so that felt like kind of a ripoff. But then I became so overly religious. My children weren't allowed to go trick-or-treating at all. But you know what churches do? Instead, every church, evangelical church, either has a terror house, like where they're trying to scare the devil out of you and scare Jesus into you, or they have a harvest festival. And so the churches we went to always had harvest festivals. So you can bring your little kids to those and they can dress up like maybe as an animal or as a Bible character. And then they're just going to get, bob for apples and stuff like that, but it's nothing at all about spirits and ghosts and goblins. And I really kept a tight rein on my kids, what they were allowed to watch or do or read or listen to. I was very controlling, yes, I was. So not a lot of fun. Not a lot of fun growing up in my house, I'm afraid. How about you?
We had lots of fun, probably too much sometimes. My parents just went right into it. And we lived 2 separate years in Australia where they don't, at least at the time, I don't know if they do now. I think that in some places they might celebrate Halloween or trick-or-treating. But
Oh.
when I lived there, they didn't. And us weird Canadians, you know, we influenced the kids on the block to go trick-or-treating and stuff like that. And we had our own little mini Halloween and stuff.
Would your
But
parents dress up?
I think a couple of times they had Halloween parties where they would dress up, but for the most part, no. But they would go all out dressing me and my brother up and taking us out. And then my dad always would like hoard fireworks, and we lived
Oh,
on a cul-de-sac, and he'd get all the neighborhood dads together, and they'd all just like make fire all night.
oh my goodness.
Yeah, it was
Wow.
a
That's
lot of
fun.
fun. I loved
So
it.
did your parents did they kind of push the scary aspect of it? Was there some go by some houses and there seems to be like a lot of blood and guts and gore and zombies and that sort of thing. Was that what it was like for you?
No, I think my parents kind of let us lead the way, like what we were ready for, what we weren't ready for, and stuff like that. I was kind of a wuss when I was a kid. I was afraid of everything. I, I used to. I had nightmares from the Wizard of Oz. Like I couldn't handle just like the most
Yeah.
basic
It's pretty
things.
creepy. Mm.
Yeah, the witch. It's the witch. To this day, I cannot handle like certain images of feet in shoes because of the feet sticking out
Oh
from,
no.
you know. Yeah, my
Now I
kids
know.
make fun of me about it all the time.
For me, I would if I watched Scooby Doo when I was a kid, I might have nightmares about Scooby Doo. Like it was just
Yeah.
too scary. And certainly I also grew up believing in the Holy Ghost, like the Holy
Yeah.
Spirit. So I did believe that there definitely were spirits floating around. They could be good, they could be bad. I believed in a literal devil and angels and all those things because I was taught that those were true and real things. So then it can become really hard to determine fact from fiction or what's fantasy and what's reality. And maybe something unexplained would happen and right away I would think, oh, it's a ghost, it's a spirit of some kind. It was actually scary. It felt scary
Yeah.
sometimes just being unsure about those things.
I was unsure of that stuff too, for sure. Because my parents, like my mom, I think she's a little bit like spiritual, where she dabbles in like maybe sometimes she might believe that there's spirits and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
My dad doesn't believe in any of that stuff, and he's quite funny about it. Like he literally will say that's horseshit over and over again. but growing up, I definitely had like things happen that I didn't really understand, and I would jump to those conclusions that it was a ghost or that something supernatural is happening. And of course, you know, when you're a young girl and you're hanging out with other young girls, like one of our favorite things to do was tell ghost stories and freak each other out at
Yeah.
sleepovers and stuff like that. So it was fun. It was almost fun to believe in that stuff, which would imply that on some level I must have had my doubts, right? Like in order to actually believe that there was something sinister coming from like some other dimension to hurt us and think it was fun, like on some level I must have not believed it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I remember thinking wanting psychics to be real. There was something that was both scary and could be comforting with the thought of someone being able to commune with the dead, with someone who'd gone on. Like if you would ever watch any of those like psychic shows on TV, like that lady out of New Jersey, I can't remember her name, but people always seemed very comforted when they'd come to see her and she'd give them this message from whoever the departed person was, and they would leave feeling better, like that they had some kind of connection and that their loved one is not suffering, this sort of thing. So I think I appreciated that element of it. But when I look at it now, I'm like, you know what, if there actually was if someone had a psychic gift, why wouldn't they know all the lottery numbers, and why wouldn't they be able to tell where the treasure's buried and all this kind of stuff? So nowadays I'm I'm pretty much a naturalist. I don't believe in anything supernatural at all, but I have family members who do, and it's not
Yeah.
my job to convince them of anything. I just know what works for me.
Yeah, I think we touched on that in the last episode when we were talking about death, about how like I have an aunt who thinks that she talks to my grandfather and stuff like that, and it's just I don't, it's not my job. She's otherwise pretty well adjusted, so it doesn't really bother me, and on some level I know that it's making her feel better, so whatever, it's not
Mhm.
hurting anybody.
Mhm.
But I definitely I was at least able to freak myself out with stuff like that when I was younger. So there was some kind of belief there, I think. And then I would always repeat the things that happened as ghost stories. And I did well into my 20s. And I believe it was in my 20s when I lived with my cousin. We were roommates, and we decided we were going to go ghost hunting in my 20s. So it's not so long ago that I was pretty
Mm.
open to this stuff. Um, and it freaked me out. But now, and it kind of makes me sad that it doesn't scare me on that level anymore, because that was fun for me.
Okay.
Like watching, I remember when I watched, the most scared I ever was watching anything was when I watched the Mothman Prophecies. And I know you're gonna laugh about that, like, who scared from a Richard Gere movie, but but it was because the week prior I had watched a documentary on the event that happened in the movie, which made it
Oh,
really, really real. And
okay.
and I remember I had this apartment with like these wraparound windows in the dining room, and I was just like standing right in the middle of it like this, like looking all around. I was so scared after this movie.
And then a huge
And
moth flew in through the window, and that was just
yeah,
that
yeah,
put you over the edge.
yeah. That freaked me out, but I can't achieve that level of fear anymore from a movie, unless it's like once you become a parent, then the scariest movies are movies when things happen to kids. But it's outside of that, I can't get freaked out anymore, because I just don't believe that stuff. And even the things that I experienced growing up that I still can't explain today, um I look at it now like I was telling you before we went live, that it's like, just because I can't explain it doesn't mean there's not an explanation. I am not like the be all and end all of human knowledge, right? Like, I'm not the standard by which everything must be explained.
Oh,
So it's just something that I can't explain. And there's been a lot of things like that in my life, but I absolutely 100% do not believe that any of them do not have any sort of natural explanation. I think they all do on some way.
I think houses settling onto their foundations and old pipes, I think those are responsible for many a drawer opening without someone touching it, many a, spooky, weird noise going on. And we just don't we just don't know because we're not plumbers and we're not carpenters and we don't know what's actually going on. And then when there is kind of this general story all around us about spirits and ghosts and stuff like that, people can jump to that. It's concerning, of course, if someone is believing that they're receiving messages from departed people, especially depending what the messages are and how
Yeah.
convincing the person is to other people. I can't remember if we talked last week about the Netflix show House of Secrets, about the Barari deaths, this family of 11 in India a few years ago, and they found all 11 of them hanged inside the house. It all took place at the same time. No neighbors heard anything. And it was obviously very, very upsetting and disturbing. And they wondered who could do such a thing. I'm going to give a little spoiler alert here now because I'm just going to tell you kind of what went on. But so they found diaries, journals in the house, and it turned out that the grandfather who had been the patriarch, he died, and then there was a power vacuum. There was a leadership vacuum in the family. You know, several generations lived together in Indian households there, and so one of the brothers moved into that position of power, but it just so happened that he had suffered a traumatic brain injury. Actually, he'd had a couple of them, and his personality changed. And what they found in the journals was that he was saying he was receiving messages from the deceased father slash grandfather, and the messages were getting darker and darker. And then the final one, and everyone in the family was to read these journals every day, and the final one was that they were all to participate in this ritual that did involve hanging, but that they would be rescued. And of course they weren't.
Yeah.
So everyone in that family was believing to some extent what this person was saying, because this person was so convinced himself. And we can see this in cult leaders, that there, some mental illness sometimes, or a traumatic brain injury, something that's occurred, so that the thinking isn't exactly clear there.
Yeah.
So we do want to be just on our guard when people are telling us that they're receiving messages from beyond. Don't let your critical thinking fly out the window. You have an obligation to protect yourself.
Yeah. I think one of the best documentaries I ever watched was An Honest Liar with James Randi, and
He
how
was so great.
I know. That documentary was amazing. It kind of put together a whole bunch of different situations where he debunked people, and you can see how they are taking advantage, how psychics and stuff like that take advantage of people who kind of need it at the time, and that makes me really angry. Especially, I've known a lot of people who are into that stuff, and it just makes me really angry. I'm laughing because there's this one time we were in I was with a friend in Venice Beach, California, and she wanted to go speak to a psychic, and she took forever. And of course there was a whole group of us, so she's just not considering anybody else's time or what we want to do and see. And she's gone for hours. And so we decided we're just gonna go do our own thing, and she can text us when she's ready. And so finally she texted me and she's like, "Where are you guys?" And I'm like, "Just ask your psychic."
Did you say that?
Yeah. She got so mad at me. She was so angry for the rest of the trip, but it was yeah, I couldn't help myself.
Did you ever go to a psychic or astrologer?
No,
I did. I've been to both.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, didn't do any good.
Yeah.
But when I left Christianity, I really wanted to explore things that had been forbidden to me,
Yeah.
and off limits, like within reason. And so those were some of the things. So I gave myself permission to just explore these
Yeah.
things, and for a while it was fun and intriguing, and I felt like I was part of a community. I was part of the New Age community. And I was missing my religious community, so that felt good. And then eventually I, found that there was dogma there as well, and certain expectations for group membership. And when people would start talking about channeling spirits from beyond and stuff, I just thought, oh, you've got to be kidding me. Like, I feel like I just left this kind of nonsense. I don't want to have anything to do with it. So it was all just, part of my pathway out of any of those beliefs.
Yeah, I think I don't know. For me, I've always found it more comforting to be basically nothing in this universe, you know? Whereas like thought the way that people who believe in psychics and ghosts and all that stuff, they believe that there's like, a path of destiny laid out for them with fate and all this stuff, and they have all these guides hanging over them that are directing them down the right path and stuff like that. It's just it's so egocentric to me. It blows my mind. Like I'm just like how can you possibly think that all of this, like grasp the enormity of the universe. How can you possibly think that in all of this, there's a whole bunch of like energy, spirits, whatever you want to call them, that are formed around guiding you through life? Just no. And is it this way for every living creature? Is it just humans? Like, do all the little bacteria in our lives get that too? Like, do they have a destiny?
Well, and when people believe in reincarnation, this can become an issue. I mean, can you be reincarnated as a dog, as a bug, as a tree, as a rock, as a leaf? And some people do believe that. My problem with that, anything related to the concept of karma, the spiritual concept of karma, I think it really can be used as a way to prohibit humans from helping other humans. You know, if the lowest caste in India is stuck there because they have karmic debt that they have to burn off or pay off or whatever, then nobody else should be helping them. And that's just not the case. Everybody is deserving of at least a chance at, happiness in their life. And that requires some education and things that are commonly denied to those in the lower castes.
Mm-hmm. It's funny though, because growing up, a lot of people were convinced that there was strange things about me because
you are a bit strange.
I am absolutely a bit strange, but I like strange things would always happen around me. But I think what happened was it would be like a couple of strange things happen, and then people kind of look for it after that, and they like the aforementioned cousin that I lived with. For a while there, she and some other people were convinced that I had some form of telekinesis like Carrie in the movie Carrie, right? Because strange things would happen to our electrics. This is going to date me, but our VCR never worked properly. And of course it was all because of my kinetic energy or whatever that was causing these issues, and not just, sometimes tech goes funny like it did last week. And there was,
and then confirmation bias comes into play, like you had mentioned before.
Yeah, and now John and I, my partner John and I, joke about it whenever anything breaks in the house. It's just, it's my weird energy.
It must be you and that energy you're throwing off there.
But I remember, like, just there was a lot of things that I could never explain. And I mean, looking back on it now, I'm sure there's an explanation. Like, for instance, there was this time when I was babysitting these kids who lived next door to me in Australia, and their parents left them at my house. And we decided to go over to their backyard and use their trampoline, but their whole house was locked up. All the windows were closed. Everything was locked up and closed, and there was like nobody inside the house at all. And I was standing by the carport where you walk into the backyard, watching the kids jump on the trampoline. And all of a sudden behind me, a window in the carport just blew from the inside of the house out all over the carport, and
it exploded.
Yeah, it smashed, and it freaked me out.
Yeah.
And of course, doing research on our house prior, because when I first moved in there, I was convinced it was haunted. So I did all this research, and of course I found that it used to be a church that had a graveyard. So I was sure that it was, a ghost that did this. There was nobody to be seen or anything like that. But then as I grew older, as I grew older, I realized that there's like pressure levels in houses, and just especially when it gets so bloody hot in Australia, right? And like they didn't have maybe they didn't have their AC running, and then it kicked in or something like that. Yeah, somebody in the chat just said air pressure. And like just because I can't explain it doesn't mean that a scientist couldn't come in and be like, yeah, well, this is what happened and this is what happened. And but that was my go-to ghost story for many, many years, and it freaked out a lot of people.
I slept with a Bible under my pillow from the time I was about probably 8 years old until I got married at 24. because I would just have terrible nightmares and be so fearful. And so I might, in the middle of the night, clutch my Bible and, pray for protection or whatever. It's possible for us to scare ourselves terribly, like to really work ourselves into a frenzy. And so it's important, especially when we become parents, for us to be able to maintain an air of calmness when our children are really genuinely scared about something, and work with them through it. And sometimes we might need to bring in some extra help, bring in a therapist for them if they're struggling with anxiety or fears like that. But our kids really do look to us a lot to set the tone in the house. Is it going to be pleasant and kind and curious and fun, or is it going to be uptight and angry and fearful?
Yeah, interesting story from when I was a kid, and I told you the Wizard of Oz show movie scared me because of the witch, and
Yeah.
I would have, after that, I would have nightmares about witches, and I used to cry, and I'd go into my parents' room, and I'd ask to sleep right in between them in their
Yep.
which now being an adult and a parent, I know how much that drives parents crazy. But anyways, my mom was like, figured that she had to do something to fix this, so she told me how did they get rid of the witch in the movie, and I said, well, they threw water on her. And so she's like, okay, next time you have a dream about a witch and you're scared, throw water on her. And from then on, that's what I did. And I think that I can like lucid dream now because of that. But it's
always with a cup of water.
yeah. But it helped a lot. And it's like, I think what I ultimately learned from that was that it's in your brain, and you control your brain, and you can control anything about that. And I still don't get me wrong, I still can freak myself out, but it's always based in reality. Like, I'll be scared that there's a dude in my house, right? Like,
Yeah, well, that is scary. I
yeah.
remember my dad was such a jerk, and he had a really bad temper. And so I was a kid, and I went into their room, and they're asleep, and he woke up and he was angry and yelling at me for going into their room. So what I decided after that was I could go into their room where it was safe, but I just couldn't wake them up. So the next night or whenever it was, I don't go to my dad's side. I go to my mom's side, and I just don't say anything. I just like stand there. And she wakes up, and I'm just standing there looking over her. I don't think she has ever recovered from that.
Yeah, we have a thing in our house where little girls are very creepy sometimes. Like, Abby is, she's my stepdaughter. She is so quiet, like unbelievably quiet. I don't know if you ever saw that Seinfeld episode where I think it was Elaine who was the quiet walker, and she would just appear out of nowhere and nobody knew that she was there, and then she would startle everybody. And so they gave her like Tic Tacs to carry around. But that's Abby would just like always just like be there. She still does it, and she's 19.
Oh, but the best Seinfeld episode ever was the one with Elaine dancing. That will forever be.
Oh yeah, that was a good one.
Did you see our beautiful compliment from Bernard? He says,
Yeah.
speaking for myself as an ex-once devout Jehovah's Witness, I now much prefer the sobriety of logic and reason to any and all religious inebriations.
Yeah.
And you may quote me on that. In fact, please do. You brilliant women rock. Thank you, Bernard.
Aww.
We're trying.
Thanks for watching. Yeah.
We're trying. Yeah, go on.
We had another comment from Beach Price who said, I saw a ghost, but it was sleep paralysis. And that is sleep paralysis is so interesting to me. I had a friend who he was absolutely convinced that he had demons follow him around. And they would be there, like he would wake up in the middle of the night, and he said his whole room would be dark, and he would see this being in his room. And this is like the very well-known symptoms of sleep paralysis. And it's, it's a hallucination basically, that and it's been studied by scientists. But he was convinced it was a demon, and
Oh,
he would
dear.
like sprinkle salt in his doorway and
How
on his windowsills.
terrifying.
Yeah, it was. And I at one point in time I challenged him and he got very upset with me. So I
Mm.
just
No.
kept my mouth shut.
Are either of your kids sleepwalkers?
No.
Because that's another thing that's creepy as fuck. You're just sitting in the living room, just eating your popcorn, watching whatever, and then your kid comes out and there's like staring, not saying anything, just staring at them. Look, is there a knife behind your back? Like, what are you doing? And then you just have to like kind of guide them back to their, well, usually to the bathroom because they usually have to go to the bathroom, but guide them back to bed. But yeah, sleepwalking. And then some people also can act out. Some people can act out while they're asleep as well. And they actually truly are asleep. So those are
Yeah.
some interesting and terrifying cases as well.
Yeah. I think the scariest thing on earth is the human brain. I mean, it's really what leads to like all the scary stories that have come out, and
Mhm.
sleepwalking and hallucinations and all that stuff. It's scary.
And some people love to be scared. I'm thinking of people who like roller coasters. Oh my God, that is so not me. But they just, yeah, and so somehow you're able to flip the switch from fear to excitement. And
Yeah.
it's just like exciting for you. Whereas
Yeah.
for me, it's just an exercise in terror and nausea. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of similar to the way I saw ghost stories and believing in that stuff growing up, is that it was like a fun scary, and it's like on some level you have that reassurance that it's nothing's really wrong. And that's the same thing with the roller coasters and stuff like that.
Well, I can't watch, I just won't watch any movie or show that has anything supernatural. To me, it's such a gigantic waste of time, whether it's zombies, werewolves, demons, the devil, anything. I'm like, but I know it's not real. So there's nothing about it that's even remotely scary. Now, true
Well,
crime stuff is different,
we could
but
you could argue zombies are real.
uh, yeah, that sort of supernatural stuff just doesn't scare me at all or do it for me.
Yeah, it doesn't scare me anymore either. I was watching recently Midnight Mass on
Yeah. Did you
Netflix.
watch the whole thing? Did you get through it
Yeah,
all?
yeah.
Oh,
It
too
was
much
all well because
preaching.
it was all filmed. Yeah, it was a lot of preaching, but I
Yeah.
loved the fact that it was like the atheist was the good guy, and
Yeah.
and
It was
the
all filmed at the coast, I think.
yeah, I was just gonna say it filmed exactly where I grew up. That
Oh,
beach, it was
really?
where I hung out constantly my
Is that
whole life. Yeah,
so?
yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't get through it. That show really created a buzz in the ex-religious community, in the ex-evangelical community, but I just found it slow moving and like I say, I hate anything supernatural. It can't keep my interest. So I gave up, I think, on episode 5 or 6. But
Mm.
some people really found it quite profound, actually.
Yeah,
So
it was I got like I was just it's the first show I've watched where the atheist ends up being in a town full of religious people, the atheist ends up being the good guy. And they're all the creeps. Like it
yeah.
was and he actually came out and said he was an atheist in the
Yeah.
show. I don't know if you
Yeah.
saw that part.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um so I liked that part. And I liked seeing like the town little fictitious town built on the beach that I used to hang out on my whole life. So
I want to see us normalizing atheism. I would like
mhm.
it to become the norm rather than something people feel that they have to hide. And in Canada, I don't think it's as big of a deal as maybe it is in the States, particularly in some parts of the States that are real like Bible belty. But that's why I think what you do is very important. Your social media presence, being an unabashed atheist, being
Mhm.
godless, and not having an issue with it, like being
Yeah.
proud of it, being fine with it.
Yeah,
So
it's just never been I don't know, it's just weird when I grew up and I started to kind of expand my horizons to realize that people had such an issue with it, because this has been my whole life. But it's like in all of like movies and TV and stuff like that, it's always the atheist is always some jerk, some cold, uncaring, joyless, miserable jerk, and
So it's Velma on
yeah,
Scooby-Doo.
yeah. But this guy was not, and that's why I liked the show. Outside of that, there was a lot of preaching, and I just wanted to clock that one lady like over
I
and
know.
over again.
I know. You love to
She
hate
was
her.
yeah, she was too much, but she's a good actor. Good actor.
So, as far as Halloween goes, then what do you think about like what ages are appropriate, in your opinion, for kids to go trick or treating?
I have always followed what my parents did with me, which is to kind of just go with, how my kids are leading me, because every kid's different, right? Like, I don't think there's one specific where a kid suddenly becomes mature enough to deal with this or that. I think that every kid is different. Like, my son is 13. He's a bona fide teenager. I no longer have actual kids in my house.
Oh.
And he acts still like he's 10. Like, he's still very much wants to be around his mom and dad. He still calls us mommy and daddy. And
Oh, that's so sweet.
yeah, and he wants to hang out with us. He wants to watch movies with us. He loves the younger kid stuff still. He likes to go to playgrounds with his friends still. And
Okay.
so for him, he's not where other people are with like scary movies and stuff like that. And but we've always been open to it. If he makes it apparent that it matters to him that he wants to see some movie, and he did that with The Walking Dead. He wanted to watch The Walking Dead, I think a year or two ago.
So
And
when he would have been 11 or 12.
yeah, and so we said, okay, we'll watch it together. And he watched a couple of episodes and he was done with it. And now he has absolutely no interest in any kind of scary movies. He loves like the Marvel universe and everything
Yeah.
on the Disney Plus app and stuff like that. And we've asked him, like, around Halloween, we'd be like, do you want to watch a scary movie on Halloween or whatever? No, he's got no interest in it whatsoever. And I think it's because there's no hands off.
Yeah, you weren't restricting it. You weren't restricting it.
Yeah, it's the same with swearing. We've been the same way with him with swearing. We've told him his whole life he was allowed to swear and he doesn't do it. So, of course we gave him the caveats, like, if you do choose to swear in class, you're going to get in trouble. And to make it about his choice and making the right choices at the right time and being appropriate.
I know as an adult, both when I lived in Vancouver and then in the Okanagan now, on Halloween, I have at times felt uncomfortable and even unsafe if a group of teenagers has come to my door, more so males than females. But either way, I mean, if you're 17 years old or 6 feet tall or whatever, and you're wearing a Freddy Krueger or some kind of, something that is scary or would indicate, would be wanting to evoke fear. I feel a little intimidated. I don't have a problem with little ones coming to the door, and even, kids that are 12 or whatever. I'm saying, okay, it's their last hurrah. The neighborhood I'm in now, we didn't have any, like not one trick-or-treater last year. So I'm prepared in case they do come. But I think, that can be a tricky issue.
So yeah, I with kids that are older, I would just so much rather they're doing that than out drinking, because that's what you do, right? When you get in Canada, you stop trick-or-treating, you go out drinking, right? That's what you do. That's the shift in Canada. Or you go, nowadays they might go do edibles or something like that. For me, I would so much rather see a 17-year-old knocking on my door asking for candy. And knowing my daughter too, she's 19 and she still likes to go trick-or-treating. So guilty of trick-or-treating until I was almost an adult. No, I think I went into my 20s.
From door to door.
I always looked like I was 12 until I like turned 30. I looked like I was 12.
That's handy.
But I mean, I don't know. I was more into the innocent things in life. I wasn't a big drinker back then. I would rather relive my childhood. It was difficult to let go of my childhood. So
Well, an interesting transition for me was leaving religion and then embracing Halloween and also embracing my sexuality and myself as a sexual being. And Halloween would be like the one time of year where I would dress up in some kind of sexy costume and go to an adult party, whether it was going to be a dance somewhere or whether a house party somewhere. And that was just very interesting and different and quite empowering for me. And I've heard people complain about that. Why are you taking something that's supposed to be for kids and you're making it slutty and sexy and for adults and stuff like that? I'm like, well, deal with it. If you don't like it, then you don't attend whatever the event is. But you don't get to tell other people how to dress or how to behave if they're not hurting somebody else.
honestly, 9 times out of 10, it's just people jealous of how good you look.
Oh, thank you.
It is like they're but it's not just I think it's on some level they're jealous of the nerve, right? Of the bravery it takes to wear something like that, and they're just unhappy with themselves. That's all it comes down to. People who are just so critical of others. I never listen to them.
What
Just smile and
about?
nod.
That's right. That's right. I'll take notes.
Yeah.
What about the whole idea of cultural appropriation and Halloween? Because things that would have been considered totally fine when I was a kid are definitely not fine now. And yes, I did at one point dress up in a kimono and pretend to be a person of Asian descent. And one year I went as a headhunter, and used all sorts of makeup. And now I've grown and evolved, and society has grown and evolved too. And so those things wouldn't be acceptable anymore. So I wouldn't do them anymore. And what do you think about for kids? Maybe dress up now instead is to be, you can be a firefighter or a police person or a robot, but we're not dressing up and pretending to be Pocahontas or, pretending to be from a culture that we're not. What do you think of that?
Well, I'm definitely guilty of that too. And even more recently, I think it was like 4 years ago, I did like a sugar skull makeup outfit. And it's actually funny because I went trick-or-treating with my son and another boy, and his uncle was taking him trick-or-treating. And so we all went together, but I had like this sugar skull makeup on, this bright neon wig on. And to this day, that guy can't recognize me anywhere. He has no idea who I am. But anyways, it was pretty quick after I did that I realized I was probably not tasteful. And yeah, I don't think it's necessary. Like, not that the only things we should do in life should be necessary, but I just don't. I think there's so many other options. Why go with something that somebody could be hurt by? Whether we think they should be hurt by it or not is completely irrelevant. If somebody could be hurt by it, why go as it? And that, I think you have to draw the line with belief versus culture. Like, because there can be Christians who don't want you to go as, like, let's say Moses in the Bible or something like that. But that's just a belief. That's, as far as I'm concerned, that's a myth that helped form our world, and it's just as relevant in my life as it is in their life. It's just in a different way. So it's not really cultural appropriation in that sense. But I think that people who people are entitled to get upset over you depicting their culture in a way that is not for you to depict, and that's fine. I think just stay away from those costumes.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm sure there's lots of different thoughts on that. I saw Dominic said I go as Baphomet. I think that's a great costume.
Yeah. John King just asked too, how is Moses different from a sugar skull? Well, Moses is a mythological character, like I said, that formed the world that I live in. It's part of my culture. Um, despite the fact that I am not a believing Christian, I was brought up culturally Christian. This is my culture, and the sugar skull is not. I am not from Mexico. I lived there, but I'm not from there. I don't have Mexican DNA. My son is Mexican, but that's only because he was born there. He's not, you know, um, ethnically Mexican, so he doesn't really have the right to do that either.
So you're considering Moses to be, like Thor or
Yeah.
Superman, just a mythological. Whereas, of course, there are people who believe that he was a real, actual person, and that everything in the Bible actually happened.
Yeah, and that's that. I mean, that's their belief. That's fine, but that doesn't mean that's not part of my culture. It is, and so is Thor. And I'm sure there's somebody out there, maybe one or two people out there, who believes in a real, legitimate Thor, and we don't. We can still dress up as Thor, because that, again, it's part of my culture. I'm not appropriating anybody else's culture. I might be, poking fun at a belief a little bit, but that's not appropriating a culture. I think it's a belief that needs to be poked.
Yeah. Yeah, all beliefs, they must withstand rigorous poking and prodding and testing, and yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
What about when you were in school? Did you guys do Halloween parties in school, and the kids are gonna dress up and have candy? Like, I always felt so sorry for all the JW kids in schools and classrooms,
Mhm.
never allowed to participate in anything.
Yeah, I
Just
felt
seemed like
bad for
such
them
a
too.
freaking ripoff.
Yeah, I remember when I was 10, my parents allowed me to have a Halloween party, and it was a boy-girl party, and I remember it was such a big deal. I know
Mm.
everybody wanted to be at my it was the first boy-girl party in all of the whole school, or our age anyway. And so everybody was very excited about it. I remember we bobbed for apples. That was fun. We couldn't do that now, not with COVID, but
That's right. So did your mom or dad stay in the party room?
yeah, they were the supervisors, and we were very well behaved. And I remember we listened to was it Tiffany? I think we're alone now. That was fun.
But you really weren't, because mom and dad were right there.
Yeah, and half a dozen other kids. Or no, not way more than that. It was like my whole grade 5 class. But it was just fun. And then we also, for Abby, because Abby, one year Abby had a lazy eye, and she had to have surgery on her eye
Hmm.
when she was 11, and it fell on Halloween. And so she couldn't go trick-or-treating. She was in recovery on Halloween. So we decided to make it up to her. Prior to her surgery, we would throw a big Halloween party. And
Oh,
yeah, it was a lot of fun. She
you
had a
guys
lot
are
of fun.
such good parents.
We try.
They're
We
so
have our
fun.
moments. I only tell you guys the good stuff.
That's
Okay.
right. That's right. I see John asked, can I go as Muhammad?
I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with that, but I think that culturally it is.
Might not be the safest thing to do.
Yeah, it's
Like,
probably
for
not
the
the
person
safest thing
wearing
to
the
do, but I don't
costume
have a problem with that.
might not be safe.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, people go as Jesus.
Yeah.
People go
I
as
don't have a
God.
problem. Yeah. To an atheist, it's just a character, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's I imagine that John, because John asked, how is Moses different from a
Yeah.
sugar skull,
Mhm.
and then asked this question. I imagine he's a believer on some level. So um
Oh.
it's hard, it's difficult for believers to understand that to us these are just characters, just exactly like Thor or Scooby-Doo. Like, literally the exact same thing to an atheist.
That's
We
right,
have
Reggie.
zero belief. Yeah.
Oh boy. Yep. Good times. Well,
But yeah,
one day I might have grandchildren. That would be fun, and I would enjoy dressing them up and taking them out and just letting them pretend. Because
yeah,
pretend is what being a kid is about. And sometimes, as a grown up, it can be fun and helpful to pretend also. And I mean, that happens in the bedroom. If it doesn't happen in your bedroom, I encourage you to try it because it can be a nice outlet. It can be lots of fun.
yeah. John asked again, why is a sugar skull offensive? Again, because it's somebody else's culture. And
Right.
it matters to them a great deal as part of their culture. And it's when you're depicting it in such a way that, like, for me, just wearing it as a fun costume, it's like a lighthearted way of depicting it. And it's not for me to decide how other people react to that. It's like, I don't personally find stuff like that offensive. If an American, for instance, wants to dress up as a Canadian, let's say, like, I'm not going to care. I don't care. I'm not going to be offended by it. But again, somebody might be. And so why choose that costume when you could choose one that nobody's going to be offended by, like
Right.
Spider-Man?
Yeah, and what he's saying is that it's religious rather than cultural. And so if we're able to poke fun at one religious belief, then we can do it at all of them. And I feel like, yep, it's a fine line.
Yeah. But just like, I mean, like that, I still wouldn't go as Moses either. And I wouldn't go as Muhammad. I wouldn't go as any of those things.
I've gone as the Pope. I've gone as a
Have
naughty
you?
nun. Oh yeah. Nothing is separate.
I might do that. I don't know about the Pope, but I might go as a nun or something like that. But it's I don't know. It's a fine line. For me, having lived in Mexico and stuff like that, I just don't like the idea of. It is also cultural. I will agree that it is a religious belief, but it is also very cultural, because there's a lot of Mexicans out there that celebrate Dia de los Muertos that don't believe in all of that stuff, but they still celebrate it, and it is their culture. So I don't know.
You got a fan there, Sandy. I can see Courtney as a nun. Like none of that.
The best Halloween costume I ever saw in my entire life, hands down, was one time I was at a bar with John, and this guy walks in dressed as a priest, but he has something under his robes to make it look like he had a boner. It was so good.
Oh my God.
I know.
Tasteful. That's awful.
Talk about being offensive, but I don't offend DC, so none of this stuff actually really bothers me. I do it out of concern for other people's feelings. I don't think I'll ever do the sugar skull thing again, because it's just for concern for other people's feelings. That's all.
One thing I think parents really need to be aware of now, especially, I guess, is actually going through your kids' candy. You do have to be aware that there are unhealthy people out there who might try to harm kids. So it pays to be careful. I know when I lived in New York when I was a child, there was someone putting razor blades in apples, I think it was. So yeah, just to be aware. And certainly we're going to make sure if little ones are going out, we're using our flashlights and that the kids can see, and that there's a parent with them to help with crossing the road and all those kinds of things, because we want it to be safe and fun.
Yeah, I think one of the funniest things though is when people warn you that the people are going to put edibles in your kids' candy. It's so ridiculous.
So the parents are eating all the candy. Just gotta try it out.
But the idea of somebody going to spend so much money, because edibles aren't cheap, go spend so much money on your edibles only to give them away to kids. Like, what's the purpose of this? Nobody's going to be giving away their edibles. They're going to be eating their edibles.
Seems like a waste of money, that's for sure.
Yeah. Just
it's good.
I
to
let
be
my kid
careful.
go by himself. Now he's gone the last couple of years by himself. So, but it's Summerland.
Do you make kids portion it out? Like, I mean, are they going to eat the whole thing in one sitting and just be horribly sick, or can they have it? Does it have to last till Easter? Like,
we have just rules about when he can eat them and at like how much at a time. So he can have some after dinner following, like for the weeks following Halloween. He can have a couple of pieces after dinner. He can take it to school and his lunch. But and then we'll let him have a few, like quite a bit probably on Halloween. But there comes a point where it's like, okay, now you're not going to sleep for 7 days if you keep eating.
yeah, when our daughter was first diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, that was a hard time because she wanted to go out and get candy, and we didn't feel we could let her have candy, so instead we just gave her money. I think that lasted for 1 or 2 years, and then she got to a better understanding of, like, she got an insulin pump and how much candy could she have or not have, that sort of thing. And now she's completely, as an adult, obviously responsible for herself. But that's another thing that can be tough for parents to navigate sometimes.
Yeah, allergies too. I know my
Mhm.
cousin had allergies, and I think my partner John had corn syrup allergy growing up, so he couldn't
Wow,
have
that's in everything.
Yeah, but he's grown out of it, which is awesome. Now he eats
Now
all the
he
good
eats all the
candy.
Halloween candy. Now you gotta hide it from John.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Well, this has been so much fun, but I'm afraid I have to go just a little bit early because I have back-to-back clients today. But thanks everybody who joined us. If you're interested in the Divorcing Religion workshop, sign up now because space is running out.
Yeah, do it because like I said, it's just an amazing service for people who are leaving religion behind. And hold on, I'll pop up the address here.
Thank you.
There you go. You can go to that address to sign up.
Yeah.
And we will be back next week at 1 on Tuesday to talk about something else. We don't know yet, but we'll
Send us
discuss
your
it on Thursday.
ideas. Yeah, for
Comment
sure.
your ideas below. And
Okay.
we will see you next time.
Bye everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.